Hi guys, I'm just down here in the lounge of the train station on the first floor. And maybe some of you come here to get some peace and quiet or do some studying. We've been so lucky to have this building for our school with the beautiful architecture, the interesting people in the building, and also maybe the history of the building. Don't forget that this is where a lot of the first immigrants to Winnipeg began their life. So many thousands of people came through the doors here and walked out onto the street to begin their new life in Canada. In those early days, it was mostly people from the British Islands or from Eastern Europe. All of you probably took a plane to get here, so you have an idea about air travel and some ideas about train travel. Of course, all kinds of travel begins with the idea of a destination. I want to go somewhere. When you board the aircraft or the train, there will be a label somewhere on a screen or a sign that says the exact city of your destination. Writing for academic purposes is like that because we give our main idea clearly at the beginning. In a way, that's our destination. Where are we going with our research? There can be some similarities between our typical physical journeys and the writing of a research paper, because we find and see things along the way that might give us learning, enjoyment, or surprise. The feelings and experience of a journey and the map of that journey can be two things that mix in interesting ways. Maybe you've seen an interactive map or an interactive phone map app. Pictures and stories can pop up as you check the locations on a map. We can say that when you come to the end of writing your research paper, you will look back and see your main idea again, all the points that you've made, and then you have some choices about what you will do at the end. Just like all the people coming through this train station, when they reach the end of the journey, some will have a funny story to tell, a plan, an idea about whether the purpose of their journey was fulfilled. Others have a sense that the purpose really is still later, after the journey. Many also check and write, "I have arrived in Winnipeg." Maybe they type that into their phone, and that restates the main idea of their trip again. We're going to look at two documents to understand more about conclusions and writing a good conclusion. First is my conclusion types document, which we talked about in class, and another online document. Let's have a look.
So let's look at the two documents. One of them is my conclusion types document, which we discussed in class. The other is from the University of Southern California. Our hearts are with those people at this time as wildfires have caused 100,000 people to flee from their homes. Now, you might feel some confusion about the exact methods of conclusions after this, but one thing to remember is that an ESL learner or beginner college student has the expectation to simply put the main points in different words in the conclusion. And this California document says that in a nice clear way in the middle, in the general rules section. The function of your conclusion is to restate the main argument. That confirms what we have said in class. Give your main points again in different words. From there, this is where it gets more exciting and more advanced. Higher level Canadian-born students are expected to think more deeply and put a little extra in to their conclusion. ESL students are expected to do the same as you progress, but you might not quite reach the deepest ideas or most rich sentences just yet. Still, we want you to try in the class to go maybe a small step further than just the main ideas again. Sometimes as an ESL student you will actually reach deeper and better conclusions than Canadian-born students because you put extra effort into making a few good complex sentences and you pay a bit better attention to the rules. There are some interesting differences between my document and the California document. You might see them in your own way, but let me just highlight a couple of important similarities and differences. What I call the great result conclusion is mentioned more as giving the consequences of your research under the developing a compelling conclusion number 4, and warning readers about possible consequences in the future, that's number 1. My emphasis is slightly different. With my idea and these two here, I think you're getting a good mix of options. When I say advice or suggestion conclusion, that connects nicely here to number 2. Recommend a specific course or courses of action. Now, in my bad conclusion types, I started with 4 things to avoid: terrible complexity, limited knowledge, scoffing, and ad absurdum. These are all reflected in the section Resist the Urge to Apologize in the California document. Now, this is quite serious, perhaps especially from some cultures. In those cultures, you have it more in the typical cultural dialogue. Now, your conclusion is not a time to apologize. Sometimes even it can be the form of bashing. Do you know this word? To bash something means you criticize it badly. You criticize even your own work. And that's a form of apologizing. Also, my document talks about the modality conclusion, and that is reflected in the failure to provide negative results section. Finally, 2 things that are very important here. California talks about failure to match the objectives of your research, and these are covered in my 2 types, the argumentative analysis and eureka conclusions. Now, I'd want to mention that there's a really nice golden nugget here in the problems to avoid section. You see the failure to comment on larger, more significant issues, and it says that in your introduction you go from general to specific, and in a conclusion you go from specific to general again. So what a great way to end this as we go again. Now, even in this little video, I return back to the general after looking at the specifics in conclusions. Now, I know you'll do a great job in your conclusions, and you might find that the California document is more formal and precise, which is more helpful to you, but I hope that my document and our classroom discussion was also helpful to identify some good aspects. All the best as you write your own conclusions for assessments, assignments, and for your research paper. Thanks for listening.